All right, Adam Caplan's filling in for Andrew DeCecco today for today's Football at 4 on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. And Adam usually joins us on the Friday where the injury updates come back, but we do have some injury updates today, and it's a pretty clean bill of health, Adam, for the Eagles, including one guy who might be a little bit of a surprise, and that's Will Shipley was back at the practice field today, but they only had 4 guys on the report yesterday, so it looks like they're entering with pretty clean bill of health.
Yeah, it's a good sign, Mike, that they only have 4 now. Yeah, Shipley's definitely surprising. Now, here's the thing. He has broken rib. He has to get clear for contact. And until he does, he can't play. It's one thing to go out there. He's got to be able to take contact. So if he gets clear for contact, he'll play this week. It's simple as that. Really not much to add. But other than I am surprised. I'm with you a little bit. Now, A.J. Dillon filled in from last week. He saw 10 snaps, right? They have a problem with pass protection on third down or any passing situations. It's just something they're going to have to work through. It's not something they didn't know, but it's been a little bit of a problem. And Tank Bigsby only played on special teams returns for kickoff returns. So obviously if Shipley plays, he'll only be on special teams if he's active. But it's certainly something to watch how they work this rotation going forward behind Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, Shipley obviously had a nice little role in the first game there, added some stuff to the offense. Also, the other name, Dallas Goedert, was on the injury report back at practice yesterday. But it looks like that knee that some people thought he might be out a little while for, he could play this week?
Yeah, so he worked some today. I got to see how they list him. We're probably looking at a questionable take at best, but he's way closer this week than last week. He didn't do anything last week. He just rehabbed his knee. Kylan Granson played a ton, 34 snaps, 57% of the snaps last week. So they miss him. They need a block tight end in the worst way. It was good to see, though, Cam Latu did a good job in his fullback role, but they need a tight end here who can block. Now, and obviously got it over the middle. With you saw in game 1, I know they were short area plays, but they need Goddard back. He and Hurts they really had a great training camp together, and it certainly showed last week that he didn't play.
Tanner McKee has been out with the broken thumb. He was the emergency quarterback last week, but does he get back on the roster as the number 2 guy?
Yeah, he's closer this week, okay? It's really, he's the 2 when he's healthy, and he's got a broken right thumb. So the good thing is he threw last week. He's throwing this too. He's getting closer. That's good news. Now, they also got some good news on offense this week. Now, I mean, he's feeling great, but Landon Dickerson, he's off the injury report with a back, and that's really good. Now, you look at his situation, you worry about he's had back problems before. He had the knee surgery, Mike, as you know, the off-season surgery. Then he had another one, the meniscus trim. The thing is, they just don't have a quality backup for him. Brett Toth is not it. I know he is the backup, but he's shown that he's not good enough. And the miss that they had on Trevor Keegan, who they thought would be his backup, he wound up being cut. He's with another team now. That miss, because they really need to develop a backup lineman, interior lineman, in the worst way right now who could play guard.
Right, and then the other guy, as we know that his injury from the preseason is Landon Dickerson. He is off the report. That's been the spot there. Going on defense, a little surprise name was Jalen Carter. There was really no reporting of where this injury kind of happened.
All right, a couple things here. So you saw him hold his wrist or his hand. That's not listed. It's the shoulder. Mike, in our reporting on Jalen Carter, we put this out after he was drafted. There was concern about some shoulder issues. He's had them since college. He usually plays, but we don't know if it's the same shoulder that he had an issue with. So he's going to play, but he is listed with the shoulder this week, and he was previously. That's something to watch. Jordan Davis, by the way, you saw him limp off with a leg injury or something. Well, he's not listed. That's a good sign.
Obviously, having him would be a big deal there. And what's the latest on Nakobe Dean as we get to week number 3 here? We know he's getting closer. And, of course, the big question will be with Dean when he comes back. What have we seen from Campbell on what Dean's role might even be?
Well, Campbell's the starter. That's not going to change because, as we said at the time, Dean will not get his job back if Campbell is doing his job well. And barring something unforeseen, which would be a major drop-off in mental errors and stuff, Campbell is so far ahead of schedule. As a team, it's way too early in either side of the football. We just don't have enough data and information. But individual players, Jahad Campbell is so far ahead of probably people around the league thought he would be. He's been terrific. He's just a stud. Now, look, Dean, he's coming off major knee surgery. He thinks he's going to be able to at least practice in Week 5. That's when he's eligible. Yet, by rule on PUP, you have to miss 4 games. He said, he said, I'll see you in Week 5. We'll see. But that would be great. And now the thing with Dean is, whatever role he'll have will be strictly decided on how he looks in practice. He hasn't practiced, so they don't know. You know how his rehab has gone. It's gone really well. But until, Mike, you get him on the field, you just don't know where he's at.
All right, Adam Caplan here. That's a look at the injuries on the Eagles side of thing. Nakobe Dean, as we pointed out, he is out through at least Week 4. But he could practice in Week 5, and that would bring up this discussion. We'll go back there. Flip it over to the Rams here because obviously they have a couple names on their injury list that could factor into this game, especially on the offense and defensive line.
Steve Avila is their guard who played center before. He's out of Baylor. He was a third-round pick. Didn't play Week 1. Outside chance he plays. Like, they practice later today, so there's a chance. They say he's closer this week than last week. They had undrafted free agent Justin Diedich, who filled in for him last week. Did a good job. I mean, hung in there. So keep an eye on that. That's an advantage Eagles, though, if he's got to play. Braden Fisk, who got hurt last year, he played briefly with an injury. He's one of their starting defensive tackles. Really good player who could rush the passer. He got hurt in pregame warm-ups last week, Mike. He only saw 13 snaps. They're optimistic he'll be able to play, but the big injury, not that he's a great player. Killer Witherspoon is a German corner at 30 years old. He's their best corner. He's done for probably a couple months, broken clavicle. They are really light at corner right now. Dennis Williams, who's a journeyman who was a starter many years ago for them, he's back. Kobe Durant, he's been a quality backup. They're really short. Both corners are about 5'10". And then the other one is the other starting corner, Emmanuel Forbes. You might remember him. A.J. Brown abused him a couple years ago. He's really thin. He's over 6 feet. I might, and we'll get into the matchups this week or in the segment for this week's game. This is a matchup where the Eagles could get A.J. Brown involved. They got to come out throwing a little bit. They don't have to throw it 40 times, Mike, but they got to get A.J. Brown on Emmanuel Forbes because Forbes is too small physically.
Yeah, we were discussing that yesterday with Brian Baldinger, who joined us and talked about that this is the week. Their secondary, their corners specifically, we're going to get into that here in just a second. So when you look at this game, let's talk a little bit about what we expect here when you look at the Rams' offense and their defense. You got Matthew Stafford. Obviously, they played twice last year. Some people forget they did play in Week 12, and the Eagles won that game kind of handily. It was 37-20. The playoff game was obviously a lot different story. So what do we expect the third time they play in less than a year?
Yeah, in fact, Sirianni's 3-0 against the Rams. So, yeah, I would say this, that last year the Eagles bombed them in L.A. Hurts played well in that game, but that was obviously a Barkley game. He was unbelievable. I would argue it was Brandon Graham's best game as an Eagle. In that, ironically, that's when he got hurt. We actually talked to BG. We interviewed him before the season started, and he talked about like he was in a zone that day. And that's one of the things with his retirement. They have not been able to replace his pass rush. But, yeah, what you're going to get on the Rams offense is Devontae Adams, who looked great last week against Tennessee. Stafford, the back problem, he's over it. He's 37 years old, still slinging it, looks great. Jimmy Garoppolo is his backup if something had to happen. They're not great on the offensive line. Coleman Shelton, who's their center, is back. He was with Chicago for a year. He's back. Kevin Dotson has been incredible. Kevin Dotson was the guy the Steelers were going to cut had they not traded him to the Rams. Dotson plays out of his mind, gets an extension. Rob Havenstein, you'll see him. He's been with the Rams since 15. Good player. He's older. And Alaric Jackson, who was an undrafted free agent in 2021, who just got a big deal. They have depth. I mean, they're above average, not that good. Eagles really handled them the last year, but the thing is you've got to be able to get to Stafford because he's got a quick release. And Devontae Adams, who we mentioned, Puka Nacua, when you watch him, number 12 in this game, Mike, watch how they deploy him. He's really not a true outside receiver. They reduce him. They move him inside, and he's really tough there. He's super strong. You saw that touchdown run last week. He looked great. Kyron Williams has been way better, Mike, than anyone thought at running back in Notre Dame. He's now in his fourth year. He got his extension. Great story of development. He's way better than people thought. And Blake Corum, who's a good player, he looked good last week. So they have a great offense. every once in a while, if their offensive line doesn't play well, so they, like in week one, they barely won. Their defense carried them. But defensively, Mike, you mentioned the corners. I don't know how they're doing it. I mean, Chris Shule is a good defensive coordinator. They're not good at corner. That's how you win. They're really good at safety. Cam Curl came over from Washington. Cam Chins, who was a third-rounder last year out of Miami. Great defensive line. Everybody knows about Jared Verse and what he did last year in the playoff game in the snow here. I mentioned Fisk. Kobe Turner is a good football player. The other Byron Young is phenomenal. Had a great week last week. Who's an edge rusher out of Tennessee. So they're really good, but the thing is they're really small, Mike, defense. Really small linebacker. They're athletic but small. Poona Ford, who will start at nose tackle, is 5'10.5", but 34-inch arms. They're athletic. They're well coached, but they're small. And the Eagles' offensive line dominated them at the game in L.A. I expect them to dominate on Sunday here in Philly.
All right, there you go. A little breakdown of the matchup that you can hear right here on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, the kickoff at 1 o'clock. It's a series of 1 o'clock games, Adam. Get the 1 o'clock football back into the rotation, and you'll hear that with Merrill Reese and Mike Quick right here on 97.3 ESPN. Hey, thanks for pinch hitting, bud.
You got it, man. Thank you.